The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 42nd floor, as David stared at the white envelope in his hands. His name was written in elegant calligraphy across the front, but he already knew what was inside. He'd been dreading this moment for weeks. With trembling fingers, he opened the invitation. There it was in gold lettering. Victoria and James request the pleasure of your company at their engagement celebration. The date was circled in red on his calendar, the same weekend as the biggest business event of the year. The Tech Summit, where he needed to secure funding for his company's next big project. David crushed the invitation in his fist and threw it across his mahogany desk. 2 years. It had been 2 years since Victoria walked out of his life, claiming he loved his company more than he could ever love her. 2 years since she told him he was incapable of real emotions, that he treated relationships like business deals. "You'll never change, David," she had said that night, her voice cold as ice. "You'll always choose work over love. I deserve someone who can actually feel something." Now she was marrying that someone. A heart surgeon, no less. Someone who apparently knew how to save lives and still have time for romance. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "Don't forget, the Tech Summit starts Friday. All the major investors will be there. This is our chance to get the funding we need." David groaned and loosened his tie. The summit was crucial. His company had developed revolutionary software that could change how hospitals managed patient data, but they needed serious money to bring it to market. 3 years of his life were invested in this project. He couldn't afford to mess this up. But Victoria would be there. She'd mentioned months ago that James had connections in the medical tech industry. They'd probably attend together, looking perfect and happy while David stood alone, proving every cruel thing she'd ever said about him. The thought made his stomach turn. He could already picture the whispered conversations, the pitying looks, the questions about his personal life that he'd never been good at answering. In business, he was confident and sharp. In social situations, especially ones involving his failed relationship, he felt like a teenager again. David walked to his window and looked down at the busy street below. People hurried along the sidewalks, umbrellas fighting against the wind. His reflection stared back at him. Expensive suit, tired eyes, and the kind of loneliness that success couldn't fix. That's when he noticed the small coffee shop on the ground floor of his building. He'd passed it every day for 3 years, but never really paid attention. Tonight, the warm light spilling from its windows looked inviting. More importantly, it looked like somewhere he could think without the weight of his office pressing down on him. 20 minutes later, David sat in the corner of Luna's cafe with a cup of coffee that was surprisingly good. The place was nearly empty except for a young woman at a table near the window. She was hunched over a laptop, surrounded by sketches and empty coffee cups. Her dark hair fell in waves around her face as she worked, completely absorbed in whatever was on her screen. David tried to focus on his own problems, but he couldn't help overhearing her phone conversation. "Mom, I know the rent is due tomorrow," she said, her voice strained. "I'm waiting for 3 clients to pay me, but they keep delaying. I just need a few more days." She listened for a moment, then continued, "No, I can't ask Aunt Rita for money. Again, she's already helped me too much. I'll figure something out, I promise." David watched as she ended the call and put her head in her hands. Her shoulders shook slightly, and he realized she was crying. Something about her situation reminded him of his own early struggles, when he'd worked 3 jobs to pay for college after his parents died. The woman, he guessed she was around 25, wiped her eyes and went back to her laptop. David could see she was working on some kind of design project. Colorful graphics filled her screen, and even from across the room, he could tell her work was impressive. That's when the idea hit him. It was crazy, definitely unconventional, but it might solve both their problems. She clearly needed money, and he needed someone to accompany him to the summit. Not a real girlfriend. He wasn't ready for that kind of complication. But someone who could play the part for a weekend, help him save face in front of Victoria and the business community. David had never done anything like this before. His relationships, few as they were, had always developed naturally through work or mutual friends. But desperate times called for creative solutions. He approached her table slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me," he said softly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation." She looked up, her eyes red from crying but alert with caution. "Can I help you?" "Actually, I think I might be able to help you," David said, then immediately realized how that sounded. "I mean, this is going to sound strange, but I have a business proposition that might interest you." The woman's eyebrows shot up. "A business proposition? At 10 o'clock at night in a coffee shop?" David felt his cheeks burn. This was already going badly. "I know how it sounds, but it's completely legitimate. I'm David Chen. I own the tech company upstairs." He pulled out his business card. "I have a problem, and you clearly have a financial situation. Maybe we can help each other." She studied his card, then looked back at him with growing curiosity. "What kind of problem?" David sat down across from her, hoping she wouldn't think he was completely insane. "I need someone to pretend to be my girlfriend for one weekend. There's a business summit this Friday and Saturday, very important for my company. My ex will be there with her new fiancé, and I—" He paused, feeling ridiculous. "I don't want to show up alone." The woman stared at him for a long moment, then started laughing. Not the reaction David had expected. "Let me get this straight," she said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "You want to hire me to be your fake girlfriend so you can impress your ex?" "Not impress," David said quickly. "Just not look pathetic." "And what exactly would this involve?" David had thought about this during his elevator ride down. "Just appearing at 2 events with me. Dinner Friday night, then the main summit on Saturday. You'd need appropriate clothes, which I'd pay for. We'd need to know basic information about each other so it looks real. Nothing inappropriate, just—" He struggled for the right words. "Companionship." The woman leaned back in her chair, studying him with intelligent brown eyes. "And what would this pay?" $10,000. Her coffee cup hit the table with a clink. $10,000 for one weekend? "It's important to me," David said simply, "and you clearly need the money." She was quiet for a long time, looking between his business card and his face. David could practically see her weighing her options: pride versus practicality, dignity versus desperation. Finally, she extended her hand. "I'm Lily Martinez, freelance graphic designer, currently between stable clients, and apparently your new fake girlfriend." David shook her hand, surprised by her firm grip and the spark of determination in her eyes. "David Chen, workaholic CEO with questionable social skills and an ex-girlfriend problem." "Well, David Chen," Lily said with a smile that transformed her entire face. "This should be interesting." As they sat in that small coffee shop, neither of them could imagine how much their lives were about to change. What started as a simple business transaction was about to become something neither of them expected. Something real, complicated, and ultimately life-changing. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside Luna's cafe, two strangers had just made a deal that would alter both their futures in ways they couldn't yet understand. The next morning, Lily woke up wondering if the entire coffee shop encounter had been a dream. But there on her nightstand was David's business card, along with a contract he'd emailed her at midnight. She read through it twice, still hardly believing this was real. Her phone rang at exactly 9 o'clock. "Good morning, this is David," came the familiar voice. "I hope I'm not calling too early. We have 4 days to prepare and there's a lot to cover." Lily sat up in bed, suddenly feeling overwhelmed. "Prepare for what exactly? I thought we just had to show up and pretend to like each other." David's laugh was nervous. "It's a bit more complicated than that. These people know me well. They'll ask questions about how we met, how long we've been together, what you do for work. We need our stories to match." 2 hours later, Lily found herself in David's office, a space so pristine and organized it looked like a magazine photo. David sat across from her with a legal pad, looking every inch the serious businessman in his navy suit and perfectly knotted tie. "So," he said, clicking his pen, "let's start with the basics. How did we meet?" Lily looked around the sterile office, and grinned. Well, we definitely didn't meet here. This place has all the warmth of a dentist's office. David looked offended for a moment, then glanced around as if seeing his workspace for the first time. What's wrong with my office? Nothing if you're trying to intimidate people. But if we're supposed to be in love, we need a more romantic story. Lily leaned back in the leather chair. How about we say we met at Luna's cafe? That's actually true, and it's sweet. You were working late, I was working late. We started talking about design and technology. But that was just yesterday, David pointed out. So we say it happened 3 months ago. We've been taking things slow because we're both focused on our careers. Lily was warming to the story now. It shows we're serious people, but also that there's real chemistry between us. David scribbled notes furiously. Okay, that works. What about your background? People will want to know about your work. For the next hour, they crafted Lily's backstory. She'd keep her real job as a graphic designer, but emphasize her most impressive clients. David was surprised to learn she'd designed logos for several companies he recognized, and websites for local restaurants that had become quite successful. You're really talented, he said, looking through her portfolio on her laptop. Why are you struggling financially? Lily's smile faded. Because talent doesn't always pay the bills. Clients want everything done yesterday but take forever to pay. Some never pay at all. And I'm not great at the business side of things, negotiating contracts, chasing down payments. I'm better with colors and fonts than spreadsheets. David nodded thoughtfully. We should work on that. If people ask about your business, you need to sound confident. This is just pretend, remember? Lily said. After this weekend, we go back to our regular lives. Something flickered across David's face, but he just nodded and returned to his notes. Their next challenge was shopping. David's assistant had arranged for a personal stylist to meet them at an upscale department store. Lily had never been in a place where individual dresses cost more than her monthly rent. I feel like a fraud, she whispered to David as the stylist, a woman named Patricia, brought out outfit after outfit. You're not a fraud, David said quietly. You belong here as much as anyone else. Patricia had Lily try on a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves perfectly. When she stepped out of the dressing room, David's reaction was immediate and genuine. His eyes widened, and he actually stumbled over his words. You look... You're beautiful, he managed. The compliment sent warmth through Lily's chest, and she found herself standing a little straighter. Really? It doesn't feel like me. Maybe that's the point, Patricia interjected. Sometimes we need clothes that show us who we could be. But David shook his head. Actually, I think you should be yourself, just the dressed-up version. He turned to Patricia. Do you have anything that's elegant but not so formal? She has this amazing smile and laugh. The clothes should let her personality shine through. 20 minutes later, Lily wore a deep green dress that was sophisticated but comfortable, with a flowing fabric that moved when she walked. She felt like herself, just elevated. Much better, David said, and his smile was so genuine that Lily felt her cheeks warm. Their biggest test came that evening over dinner at an expensive Italian restaurant. David had insisted they practice in public, where they'd have to maintain their act around other people. So tell me about your family, David said as they waited for their food. People always ask about family. Lily twirled her wine glass. My parents divorced when I was 12. Mom remarried a really great guy when I was in high school. Dad lives in Phoenix now with his new wife and their twin boys. It's complicated but not dramatic. She paused. What about you? David's expression grew serious. My parents died in a car accident when I was 22, just before I graduated college. They were immigrants from Taiwan, worked incredibly hard to give me opportunities they never had. That's why... He stopped himself. Why you work so much? Lily finished gently. Yeah, I guess I feel like I owe it to them to be successful, to prove their sacrifices meant something. Lily reached across the table and touched his hand without thinking. I'm sure they'd be proud of you." David looked down at their joined hands, surprised by how natural it felt. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They practiced their couple behavior throughout dinner, sharing food, laughing at each other's jokes, maintaining the kind of easy physical contact that suggested intimacy. But somewhere during the evening, the practicing stopped feeling like work. Lily found herself genuinely interested in David's stories about building his company, the challenges he'd faced, his hopes for the medical software that could help hospitals save lives. He wasn't just a stuffy CEO. He was passionate about making a difference. David, meanwhile, was charmed by Lily's humor and creativity. She told stories that made him laugh harder than he had in months, and her insights about visual design opened his eyes to aspects of his own company's branding he'd never considered. "You know," Lily said as they shared tiramisu, "you're nothing like I expected when I first met you." "What did you expect?" "Cold, arrogant, the kind of guy who treats people like business expenses." She smiled. "But you're actually kind of sweet. Awkward sometimes, but sweet." David felt something shift in his chest. "You're not what I expected either. I thought this would be more like hiring an actress. But you're real. You actually listen when I talk." Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment both forgot this was supposed to be pretend. The spell was broken when David's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and his face darkened. "What is it?" Lily asked. "Victoria. She heard I'd be at the summit and wanted to catch up." He showed Lily the message. "She's probably curious about whether I'll show up alone again." Lily felt a surprising surge of protectiveness. "Well, she's going to be disappointed. By the time this weekend is over, she'll see exactly what she gave up." David looked at her with gratitude and something deeper. "Thank you, Lily, for doing this, for being you." As they walked back to their cars, both were thinking the same thing. This fake relationship was starting to feel surprisingly real. And that was either the best thing that could happen or the most dangerous. Neither was ready to admit which one scared them more. Friday evening arrived faster than either of them expected. David stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the third time. His hands were shaking slightly, which annoyed him. He'd given presentations to rooms full of investors, without breaking a sweat, but tonight felt different. Tonight, everything he'd worked for could be decided by how well he and Lily could convince people they were in love. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. David opened the door and felt his breath catch in his throat. Lily stood there in the deep green dress they'd chosen, but something was different. Her hair was styled in loose waves, her makeup was subtle but perfect, and she carried herself with a confidence he hadn't seen before. "Wow," he said, then immediately felt foolish for being so obvious. Lily smiled, and he noticed she seemed nervous too. "You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Chen." David wore a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly, and Lily realized this was the first time she'd seen him look truly relaxed. Maybe it was because they were finally putting their plan into action, or maybe it was because he'd loosened up over the past few days. But he looked less like a stressed CEO, and more like a man she could actually fall for. The thought surprised her so much that she stumbled slightly on her heels. "You okay?" David asked, steadying her with a gentle hand on her elbow. "Just nervous," she admitted. "What if people can tell we're faking it?" David looked into her eyes with surprising intensity. "Then we don't fake it. We just be ourselves. Together." The hotel ballroom was more elegant than anything Lily had ever seen. Crystal, chandeliers cast warm light over round tables draped in white linen, and a jazz quartet played softly in the corner. The room buzzed with conversation as tech industry leaders mingled with potential investors. David's hand found the small of Lily's back as they entered, and she was surprised by how natural it felt. They'd practiced this, but the gentle pressure of his palm sent warmth up her spine that had nothing to do with rehearsal. "There's my star entrepreneur," boomed a voice behind them. They turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit approaching with a wide smile. "David, you look good, son. Business must be treating you well." "Robert," David said, shaking the man's hand warmly. "I'd like you to meet Lily. Lily, this is Robert Harrison, one of our potential investors." Lily extended her hand with a smile. "It's wonderful to meet you, Mr. Harrison. David talks about you all the time." Robert's eyes twinkled as he shook her hand. "Does he now? And what does he say?" "That you're the smartest investor in the room and the only one whose opinion really matters for this project," Lily said smoothly. It was partly true. David had mentioned Robert's importance, but she delivered it with such warmth that Robert beamed. "I like her already," Robert said to David. "She's got good taste and better instincts than most people I meet." As Robert walked away, David squeezed Lily's hand. "That was perfect. He's been playing hard to get for weeks, but you just melted his defenses in 30 seconds. "It's easier than I thought," Lily said. "I just told him what was true. You do respect his opinion." David looked at her with growing admiration. "You're amazing at this." The evening continued smoothly. Lily charmed investor after investor, not by pretending to be someone she wasn't, but by being genuinely interested in their work and their connection to David. She asked thoughtful questions about the medical technology industry and shared insights about visual design that several people found fascinating. David watched her work the room and felt something he'd never experienced before: pride in his partner. Not pride in owning something beautiful, but pride in being chosen by someone remarkable. Every time Lily laughed at his jokes or touched his arm while talking to someone new, he felt more confident, more like the man he wanted to be. Then Victoria arrived. David saw her first across the crowded room, elegant in a silver dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She was with James, her fiancé, a handsome man with graying temples who looked exactly like what central casting would order for a successful doctor. "That's her, isn't it?" Lily said quietly, following David's gaze. "How did you know?" "The way. Your whole body just tensed up. Plus, she's looking at you like she's trying to figure out a puzzle." Lily slipped her arm through David's. "She's beautiful." "So are you," David said automatically, then realized he meant it completely. Victoria approached them with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "David, what a surprise. I wasn't sure you'd make it tonight." "Victoria," David said evenly. "This is Lily Martinez, my girlfriend. Lily, this is Victoria Walsh." Lily extended her hand with genuine warmth. "It's nice to meet you, Victoria. David's told me so much about you." Victoria's smile became more genuine, but also more calculating. "Has he? How interesting. And how long have you two been together?" 3 months, Lily said easily. "We met at the little coffee shop in David's building. I was working late on a design project, he was working late on saving the world, and we just started talking." "How romantic," Victoria said, but there was something sharp in her tone. "David's never been one for coffee shops. He usually prefers more structured environments." Lily felt David stiffen beside her and something protective flared in her chest. "People change when they find the right person," she said simply. "David's full of surprises." James stepped forward, extending his hand. "I'm James Peterson. You must be the famous David I've heard so much about." David shook his hand, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact. He could see why Victoria had chosen him. James had the kind of easy confidence that David had always envied. "Lily's a graphic designer," Victoria said, and somehow made it sound like a hobby rather than a profession. "How creative. Do you have any major clients?" It was clearly meant to be dismissive, but Lily just smiled. "I've been lucky to work with some wonderful companies. Actually, I just finished a project for MedTech Solutions. They're revolutionizing patient data management in hospitals." David's eyes widened. That was his company's main competitor, and he knew they'd recently rebranded. "You did their new logo?" James asked with interest. "That's impressive work. Clean, professional, but still approachable." "Thank you," Lily said, graciously. "It's always rewarding when a design helps people connect with important work." Victoria's expression had shifted to something closer to respect, tinged with annoyance. "Well, that's quite a coincidence." "Not really." Lily said with a laugh. David and I talk about work all the time. He's taught me so much about the medical, tech industry. It's fascinating how technology can save lives. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, but Victoria seemed to lose interest once it became clear that Lily wasn't going to be intimidated or dismissed. When they finally walked away, James could be heard saying, "She seems lovely, Victoria. Much more interesting than you described." David and Lily found themselves alone near the dance floor as the jazz quartet began playing a slow song. "I can't believe you work for MedTech," David said. "You never mentioned that." "You never asked about all my clients," Lily replied. "Besides, it was just a small project. Nothing like what you're building." David shook his head in amazement. "You defended me to her. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Lily said firmly. "She was being mean, and I don't like it when people are mean to people I care about." The words hung between them. Lily had said them without thinking, but they were true. Somewhere over the past week, she'd started caring about David as more than just her employer. "Would you like to dance?" David asked softly. Lily nodded, and they moved onto the dance floor. David's arms came around her waist, and she rested her hands on his shoulders. They swayed to the music, closer than they'd practiced, and both realized that nothing about this moment felt fake. "Thank you," David said quietly. "For tonight. For everything." "Thank you for giving me a chance," Lily replied. "I never thought I'd fit into a world like this." "You don't just fit," David said, looking into her eyes. "You make it better." As they danced, neither of them noticed Victoria watching from across the room, her expression thoughtful and slightly troubled. For the first time since she'd left David, she was wondering if she'd made a mistake. Saturday morning came too soon. Lily woke up in her small apartment staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment from the night before. The way David had looked at her during their dance, the warmth in his voice when he thanked her, the feeling of his arms around her waist, none of it felt like acting anymore. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Coffee before the big day? Meet me at Luna's at 9? Lily's heart did a little flip, which scared her more than she wanted to admit. This was supposed to be a business arrangement. She was getting paid to pretend to be his girlfriend, not to actually fall for him. But as she got ready, choosing her clothes more carefully than usual, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed between them. David was already waiting when she arrived at the cafe, 2 coffee cups on the table. He looked different this morning, less polished than usual, his hair slightly messy as if he'd been running his hands through it. "Couldn't sleep either?" Lily asked, sitting across from him. "Not really," David admitted. "Last night was intense. Robert Harrison called me this morning. He's ready to invest. 2 other firms are interested too. This could actually work, Lily." "That's amazing," Lily said, and she meant it. Seeing David's face light up with excitement made her genuinely happy. "You deserve this. Your software really could help people." David's smile faded slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you. The way you talked to those investors, how you handled Victoria." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "I need to ask you something." Lily's stomach tightened. "What?" "Last night, when we were dancing, it felt..." David struggled for words. "It didn't feel like we were acting anymore." The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too quiet. Lily wrapped her hands around her cup, using the warmth to steady herself. "I know what you mean. This complicates things," David said quietly. "The arrangement we made was supposed to be simple, professional, and now it's not," Lily finished. They sat in silence for a moment, both afraid to say what they were really thinking. Finally, David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is your payment," he said, sliding it across the table. $10,000 as promised." Lily stared at the envelope without touching it. Something about seeing the money made everything feel wrong. Taking payment for what had happened between them last night felt like cheapening something precious. "I can't take this," she said. "We had a deal," David said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The deal was for me to pretend to be your girlfriend, but last night—" Lily looked up at him. "I wasn't pretending, David, were you?" David's eyes met hers, and she saw the answer before he spoke. "No, I wasn't." The admission hung between them, like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Lily felt her heart racing. This successful, brilliant man had feelings for her. Really her, not the polished version she'd played last night. But then reality crashed back in. "This is crazy," Lily said, standing up abruptly. "We barely know each other. A week ago, you were a stranger who hired me to solve a problem. I don't belong in your world, David." "What do you mean?" "Look at us." Lily gestured between them. "You own a company. You wear suits that cost more than my rent. You have investors and business deals and a life I can't even imagine. I'm a freelance designer who couldn't even pay her bills last week." David stood too, his expression hurt and confused. "Money doesn't matter to me, Lily. Last night proved that. You made me feel more like myself than I have in years." "But it does matter," Lily said, her voice rising. "Victoria was right about one thing. This is your world, not mine. Last night was like playing dress-up, but eventually the costume comes off. You think I care about costumes?" David's voice had an edge now. "You think what happened between us was about what you were wearing or how much money you make?" "I think you're caught up in the moment," Lily said, but even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. "In a few weeks, when the excitement wears off, you'll realize we have nothing in common except good chemistry." David stared at her for a long moment. "You're scared," he said quietly. "You're scared that this might be real, so you're running away." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. "Maybe I am scared, but I'm also being realistic. This was supposed to be temporary, David, we both knew that." "Things change," David said. "People change. I know I have." "Have you?" Lily challenged. "Or are you just rebounding from Victoria? Maybe you're confusing gratitude with something else." The words hit David like a slap. He stepped back, his expression closing off. "I see. So you think I'm just using you to feel better about myself?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." David's voice was cold now, all the warmth from the night before gone. "You're right, Lily. This was a business arrangement. Let's keep it that way." He picked up the envelope and held it out to her. "Take the money. Finish the job. After today's summit, we'll go back to our separate lives." Lily wanted to refuse again, but something in David's tone stopped her. The wall had come back up between them, and she realized she'd been the one to build it. She took the envelope with shaking hands. "Fine," she said quietly. "Let's finish this." The main summit event was held in the hotel's largest ballroom. Hundreds of tech industry professionals filled the space, networking and attending presentations about the latest innovations. David and Lily moved through the crowd like actors playing their parts, but the easy connection from the night before was gone. They smiled at the right moments, held hands when people were watching, and made small talk with potential investors. But there was a stiffness between them now, a careful politeness that felt worse than outright fighting. "You two seem different today," Robert Harrison observed when they spoke with him during a break between presentations. "Everything all right?" "Just focused on business," David said with a forced smile. "Big day for the company." Robert looked between them with the sharp eyes that had made him successful in business. Well, relationships take work. The best partnerships are worth fighting for." His words followed them as they moved through the crowd. Lily found herself watching David when he wasn't looking, noticing how he'd reverted to his old habits. The stiff posture, the formal way of speaking, the invisible barrier he put up around himself. During David's presentation about his medical software, Lily sat in the front row and felt a surge of pride despite everything. He was brilliant up there, passionate about his work and genuinely excited about how his technology could help hospitals save lives. This was the man she'd started falling for. Not the CEO with the perfect suits, but the person who cared deeply about making a difference. After his presentation, which received enthusiastic applause and several immediate investment offers, David found Lily in the lobby. "That was incredible," she said, meaning it completely. "You're going to change so many lives with this." For a moment, David's professional mask slipped, and she saw the man from the night before. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." They stood there looking at each other, both wanting to say more but not knowing how to bridge the gap they'd created that morning. "I should go," Lily said finally. "The job's done. You got what you needed." "Lily, wait," David started, but she was already walking away. As Lily headed for the elevator, she passed Victoria, who was standing near the registration desk with James. "Leaving so soon?" Victoria asked with false sweetness. "The day's barely started." "My work here is finished," Lily replied. Victoria's smile became more genuine and somehow more cruel. "I thought as much. David always did have trouble with commitment. Some people are just meant to be alone." The words stung because they echoed Lily's own fears. As the elevator doors closed, she caught a glimpse of David across the lobby, looking lost and alone despite being surrounded by people congratulating him on his success. Both of them had gotten what they thought they wanted, but somehow it felt like they'd both lost something much more valuable. 2 weeks passed like a gray fog. David threw himself into work with the kind of intensity that worried even his most dedicated employees. 3 major investors had committed to funding his medical software, contracts were being signed, and his company was about to expand beyond his wildest dreams. He should have been the happiest man alive. Instead, he felt empty. Every morning he walked past Luna's cafe without stopping. Every evening he worked late to avoid going home to his silent apartment. The success he'd worked so hard for felt hollow without someone to share it with, without Lily to share it with. His assistant knocked on his office door one Thursday afternoon. "Mr. Chen? There's a call for you on line 2. It's about Lily Martinez." David's heart jumped, but when he picked up the phone, it wasn't Lily's voice he heard. "Is this David Chen?" asked an elderly woman with a slight Spanish accent. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Rosa Martinez. I'm Lily's grandmother. I got your number from her phone contacts." David sat up straighter. "Is Lily okay?" "She's in the hospital," Rosa said without preamble. "She's been here for 2 days. Exhaustion, the doctors say, but I think it's more than that. She's been working herself to death since last weekend, barely eating, barely sleeping. She won't tell me what happened, but she's been crying a lot." David was already reaching for his car keys. "Which hospital?" "Seattle General, room 314. "But Mr. Chen? She might not want to see you. I don't know what happened between you two, but she's been carrying around that envelope of money like it's burning her hands. She won't spend it, won't even put it in the bank." David felt something crack open in his chest. "I'll be right there." The hospital smelled like disinfectant and sadness. David had always hated hospitals. They reminded him too much of the night. His parents died, but he walked through those sterile hallways without hesitation, carrying a small bouquet of sunflowers he'd bought from the gift shop. He found room 314 and paused outside the door. Through the small window, he could see Lily sleeping in the narrow bed, looking smaller and more fragile than he'd ever seen her. Her grandmother sat in the chair beside her, holding her hand. David knocked softly and entered. Rosa looked up, studying him with sharp brown eyes that reminded him of Lily's. "You must be David," she said quietly. "You look exactly like she described." "How is she?" "Stubborn," Rosa said with a small smile. "Like her grandfather. The doctors say she'll be fine, but she needs rest. Real rest, not this running herself into the ground she's been doing." Lily stirred at the sound of voices, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw David, she struggled to sit up. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Your grandmother called me," David said, setting the flowers on the bedside table. "She was worried about you." "I'm fine," Lily said automatically. But even David could see she wasn't. Her face was pale, her eyes had dark circles under them, and she looked like she'd lost weight. Rosa stood up, patting David's shoulder. "I'm going to get some coffee. You two need to talk." After she left, David and Lily sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, David spoke. "Why won't you spend the money?" Lily looked away. "Because it feels wrong, like I'm being paid for." She trailed off. "For what we felt for each other," David finished. "I know. I've been thinking about that a lot." "Have you?" Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. David moved closer to her bed. "Lily, I need to tell you something. That night at the gala when we were dancing, when we talked to those investors, that wasn't about impressing Victoria or proving anything to anyone else. It was about being with you." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "David, don't. We already decided this wouldn't work." "No, you decided," David said gently. "You got scared and ran away, and I was too proud to chase after you." "I had good reasons," Lily protested weakly. "Did you? Or were you just afraid that someone like me could actually care about someone like you?" The words hung in the air between them. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "My whole life, people have looked at me and seen what I'm not," she said quietly. "Not educated enough, not wealthy enough, not polished enough. When you hired me, I thought I knew what that was about. Rich guy needs arm candy for an event. Simple transaction." "But it wasn't simple," David said. "No, it wasn't, and that scared me more than anything, because for the first time someone looked at me and saw enough. Just enough, exactly as I am." She looked up at him with wet eyes. "Do you know how terrifying that is? To have something that good and know you could lose it?" David sat on the edge of her bed, reaching for her hand. "You think I'm not scared? Lily, I've never felt this way about anyone. Not Victoria, not anyone. You make me want to be better than I am." "You don't need to be better," Lily said fiercely. "You're already amazing. You're building something that will help people. You're kind to your employees. You remember how your assistant takes her coffee. You're not the cold businessman I thought you were. And you're not the struggling artist you think you are," David replied. "You're brilliant, talented, and stronger than anyone I know. You belong anywhere you want to be, including with me." They looked at each other for a long moment, both afraid to hope. "I don't know how to do this," Lily admitted. "I've never dated someone who owns companies and wears $1,000 suits." David laughed softly. "I don't know how to do it either. I've never dated someone who makes me laugh until my stomach hurts, or who cares more about sunflowers than stock options." "Sunflowers?" Lily looked at the bouquet he'd brought. "Your grandmother said they're your favorite. She also said you've been carrying around that envelope for 2 weeks." Lily reached into the bedside drawer and pulled out the crumpled envelope. "I couldn't spend it. It felt like I was selling something precious." David took the envelope and tore it in half. "Then don't. This was never about money anyway." "David," Lily gasped, "that was $10,000. And it was the worst investment I ever made," David said firmly. "Because it almost cost me the best thing that ever happened to me." Rosa chose that moment to return with her coffee, taking one look at them and smiling widely. "Finally," she said, settling back into her chair. "I was starting to think you were both too stubborn to figure it out." 3 months later, David proposed to Lily in Luna's cafe, at the same table where they'd first made their crazy deal. The ring was simple and elegant, nothing like the ostentatious diamond he'd given Victoria years before. "This is where it all started," he said, getting down on one knee as the evening crowd pretended not to stare. "Where I met the woman who taught me the difference between success and happiness." Lily said yes through happy tears, and the entire cafe burst into spontaneous applause. Their wedding was small and perfect, held in Rosa's backyard garden with string lights and homemade food. Victoria sent a card that simply said, "Congratulations, you found what I was too foolish to see." David's company went on to revolutionize hospital data management, but he learned to leave work at the office. Lily's design business flourished, especially after David introduced her to several clients who appreciated her talent and creativity. But their greatest success was the life they built together, one based not on what they could do for each other, but on who they became when they were together. Love, they discovered, wasn't about finding someone who fit into your world. It was about creating a new world that belonged to both of you.